There we go. Hello, hello, hello. Apologies. I don't know what I was thinking this weekend. Just put both streams to go live half an hour earlier than normal, but that's all right. I'm here. We're ready to go. I haven't made the members only stream yet for later on, so that was what I was in the midst of doing and setting a couple of bits and pieces up. But there we are. Hello everybody in the chat already. Hello Sally, hello Kelly, hello Antonio, how's it going? Hello Sarah, hello Josh, hello Peanut, Rover Forever, self-hosted, how are we doing? D plays the Lord Chip. Guys, what happened? I apologize. I put the stream to go live at 1 o'clock, even though we're still 43 minutes out from the start of the Grand Prix. We normally go live half an hour before the start of the Grand Prix. For some reason, today and yesterday, or this weekend, I've set both streams to go live an hour before the start of the Grand Prix. But we're there now. We were a bit early yesterday because I'd done it yesterday. Should have checked it, really. Should have checked it, considering I made this mistake yesterday. Should have probably checked I hadn't also made the same mistake today, but I had. And there we are. T1 will be exciting today. Very, very. Like, the problem is for Max, stunning lap yesterday to get himself onto pole position. Now he's got to, you know, really dig deep going down towards turn one, because he is going to have no slipstream. Everybody's going to shuffle in behind him. And it's not even necessarily down towards turn one. It's also down towards sort of turn four, turn five, because you get the slipstream through turn three as well. You get a little bit of a slingshot down towards turn four. And we saw from Oscar Piastri last year, that's where you can just sort of brake late, go for it, try and do something a little bit different. You do indeed get an extra 17 minutes of torque. I mean, we've got 42 minutes until lights out. I don't even know if the cars are making their way onto the grid yet. I haven't got my stream open. Ah, yeah. Let's have a little look. Do you think there's a chance of a double Ferrari podium? Not particularly. Should we do predictions? I think we touched upon them yesterday. Let's have a little look at the predictions once more, just so we can see them before we dive straight into it. I'd say you guys have done pretty well, although maybe underestimating Max Verstappen a little bit. He normally is in and amongst the predictions. He's normally up there as one of the podium sitters. Gone for Piastri over Norris in terms of the Grand Prix winner, which is the opposite of last time out in Zandvoort. So maybe we'll see you guys predicting Lando Norris to win in Zandvoort. It ended up being Piastri. Now you guys predicted Piastri to win in Monza. Will it end up being Norris? You know, like a bit of a switch around between you guys. Lando on the podium just behind. And then you guys, I think, you know, you have to, don't you? It's Monza. It's the Tifosi. Charles Leclerc does often deliver out here in front of the Ferrari fans. 2019, 2024, both of them insane victories from Charles Leclerc in front of the Ferrari fans. I think the Hamilton effect as well. There's a bit of positivity around Ferrari bringing in Lewis Hamilton this weekend being a weekend where they can do well. I think Hamilton, with that 5th-place penalty, kind of made sure that he was not the Ferrari driver you ended up voting for being on the podium, and instead being the Ferrari driver you expect to struggle a little bit from 10th place. It's going to be a weird afternoon for Lewis, because DRS trains can be really tricky around here. Maybe needs some sort of strategy to go his way so that he doesn't end up being that struggle driver like you have said. Kimi Antonelli, you had as your surprise, your positive surprise, his home Grand Prix, of course, where he got his first run out in a Formula One car a year ago. Does it feel like a year ago that we were talking about Kimi Antonelli being confirmed for that Mercedes seat and getting a run out at his home Grand Prix? That year has gone so insanely quickly, but you guys are expecting big things from him this afternoon. Actually, a little bit of an underestimation of Aston Martin. I know Lance Stroll went out in Q1, but Fernando Alonso really clicking with the car in qualifying yesterday, managing to get himself up into Q3. It's more the RB cars. You could even argue the Williams cars have been a little bit of a flop compared to where we were expecting them to be and how competitive they have been throughout the midfield. Am I surprised Isaac Cadwell got out in Q1? Yes, but also, you know, he's starting from the back of the pack anyway. It's a bit of a weird one. I think they just must have got it wrong at RB. I haven't really, I know it's bad from me because I'm literally hosting this show, but I haven't looked into the qualifying stats too much between yesterday and today. It's been a little bit of a busy weekend. In fact, shall we have a little look together? Got an extra few minutes. Let me quickly find the sharing board, GM Tempo. What did happen for Isaac Hadjar? Should we have a little look? Oh, no, wait. Wasn't Isaac Hadjar's time because he made a mistake going around turn 7? Let's have a little look. Turn 7. Yeah, look, he made a little mistake out of turn 7. Probably a little bit hard to see on your guys' screens, but just over the GM Tempo logo, you can see there just like a little kick. So coming through turn 6, accelerates into turn 7, brakes. As he was getting back on the accelerator, he had to lift off for a moment. So I think he went wide, didn't he, through turn 7? So it was a little mistake from Isaac Hadjar on his fast lap. Tiny little mistake there. Oops. Go back. Hello. I've ruined it. Tiny little mistake there from Isaac Hadjar. But just that tiny little bump, just where my cursor is hovering around, is a mistake from him. Dips the wheel into the gravel and then gets back on the accelerator well, but is never going to get back up to the top speed that he would have done. Maybe lost a tenth or two there. And you look at where he was versus where he could have been. And that's the difference. It's super, super competitive right now in these qualifying sessions. Really difficult for the drivers to get through to a session without basically having an absolutely perfect lap. Like, it is the real sort of task of these drivers to be perfect throughout every single qualifying session. Like, to get through Q1 and then Q2 and then get into Q3, you have to basically put in 3 or 4 perfect laps as the track is evolving and as the cars are getting quicker and quicker and as we're building into the session. There's no room for an error. And it's kind of what Lando Norris was saying. Like, if you look at his lap times versus Verstappen, say, you can see that Verstappen, as the session progressed, just generally, you know, got quicker and quicker and quicker every single time. I know there's this lap here where Verstappen sort of came off the accelerator a bit, didn't need to put that fast lap in, but you look at his fast laps throughout the session, started at 1:19.8, then just got a little bit quicker, 1:19.4, then got a little bit quicker, 1:19.1, then got a little bit quicker, 1:18.9, then got even quicker still, 1:18.7. He kind of built himself into the session. I think that's one thing that Max Verstappen has over a lot of the other drivers on the grid, where he does just seem to be able to continually find time, and he's almost got this ability inside of the car to be very analytical of what's happening in front of him and adapt his driving almost lap upon lap, which is an insane skill to have, and not a skill that many drivers have without, you know, going back into the garage, looking at the data, various things like that. But Max just seems to be able to creep up when it comes to qualifying. And I mean, that's why he's managed to get 5 pole positions this season. He's equal with Oscar Piastri in terms of pole positions in 2025, and ahead of Lando Norris in terms of pole positions in 2025 as well. So Max Verstappen just has this ability to find those tenths as he goes along. Whereas you look at Lando Norris's sessions, okay, he was quicker than Verstappen to begin with. He got a 1:19.6 on their first flying laps together, but then it just kind of remained where it was, 1:19.6, 1:19.5. He's found a tenth or so. You can see Max has found 3 or 4 tenths between his first couple of runs. Then Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, a similar kind of time, 1:19.4s as they get back into it. Then we had Norris kind of making a couple of errors, didn't we? Right, really struggling in Q2 to guarantee himself a spot in Q3, then comes out super early, has to be the first driver out in Q3, set an additional lap time compared to Max Verstappen's lap times, and then by the time he kind of even gets to that final fast lap, he's got to find if he's going to match Max Verstappen's time, he's got to find 7/10 of a second between the previous lap that he did and the lap that he needs to get for pole position. It's just not going to happen. Like, it just finding 7/10 of a second is insane. Like, he did pretty well. He found what, 6 and a bit, 6 and nearly 6/10 of a second. Not quite what he needed, but even so, absolutely ridiculous from Max Verstappen. He just has this ability to find tenths where others can't. I wonder whether there was an egregious error or anything from Lando Norris. Not particularly, to be honest. He's always behind Norris, even through turn 1. Taking a different line through turn 1, actually. Max Verstappen gets a much better exit out of turn 2. And then through turn 3, turn 4, and 5. I think Lando's just sort of playing catch-up. That first sector from Max Verstappen, really strong in comparison to Lando, even though Lando is quicker through turn 3. I think just with the McLaren having a bit of extra downforce and being a bit more aerodynamically stable through those long sweeping corners. So Lando was quicker through turn 3, but the general first sector time, Max Verstappen is ahead by a couple of tenths really before they just after they go through turn 4, turn 5. Then Lando does make the time back up again. That middle part of the lap starts to get better and better. Lando much better through 6 and 7. Has to be said. He's within 0.05 of a second of Max Verstappen. Verstappen then a little bit quicker through turn 8, but Lando carrying more speed through 9 and 10. And Max just getting that little bit extra straight line speed on the penultimate straight before the final corner. It's not massive differences. It's basically that first sector where Lando Norris just lost out a little bit to Max Verstappen. Maybe didn't quite have those tyres in the perfect place going down towards turn 1, turn 2. By the time the car came alive for sort of turn 6, 7, 8, as we get into the middle part of the lap, moving into the final part of the lap, I think Lando Norris then got his tyres into that right window, was able to get a little bit more of the pace that we know is inside of that McLaren down onto the track. But even so, like, I still think an absolutely brilliant lap from Max Verstappen, and really grew into the session step by step by step. Max is basically running more downforce to make it a little bit, to make up more time on the straights. Yeah, that's also probably the case. I know Max had a different rear wing to Yuki Tsunoda. They changed the rear wing on Max's car between free practice 3 and qualifying, whereas Tsunoda had a slightly different rear wing. So again, they're sort of trying different things there inside of the Red Bull team, and I think that just goes to show how planted the McLaren car is as well. The fact that Red Bull are still looking at different setups for each of their cars, and obviously that also plays into the fact that Yuki Tsunoda isn't feeling 100% confident inside of that Red Bull car still. So they're trying different things. It was something that Albon said about the Williams cars too, where they were trying out a couple of different things inside of the Williams cars. Be interesting to see the comparison between Sainz and Albon. Yeah, Albon just really struggled to get going, didn't he? Albon with that big mistake as well in that flying lap at the beginning of Q2, I want to say that one is. Yeah, beginning of Q2, lap 9 of the session. Big mistake from Alex Albon. Just kind of killed his lap there. Don't know why he didn't just come into the pits, to be honest with you, after that lap, Albon, because felt like he was never going to get anything out of it, but finished it nonetheless, a 121.4. Then a little bit quicker than Carlos Sainz the next time around, and then a little bit slower than Carlos Sainz still. But this is what I mean by, like, if I just put Max Verstappen's curve on there again, Verstappen's curve always tends down. It's like insane how he just gets better and better and better. Like, there's never really a lap from Max where he doesn't, you know, there's never a lap from Max where he makes a mistake or messes up. Like, even this lap here was just because he was getting back into the swing of things and didn't need to set a fast lap at this point. This was just like okay, we've got an opportunity. The tires are a little bit worn. Get out there, see what else you can kind of get from the track time. And I know you shouldn't really compare pole position to the two Williams cars that didn't qualify inside of the top 10, but this is what I mean, where you have this ebb and flow between, you know, Carlos was getting quicker, then a couple of laps are slower, then he's got to try and find that pace again, and it's really quite difficult when you are going up and down in terms of those times, and you're trying to find that extra little bit, but it's not coming for you. So by working too hard, you lose out on time, and then you're kind of in your own head a lot of the time as well when these drivers come through qualifying like this. I think we can also have a little look at Leclerc versus Hamilton. They followed very similar trajectories over the course. There you go. You can see it. They follow very similar trajectories. Leclerc always had that little 10th on Lewis Hamilton, it has to be said. And again, they sort of did that thing where they tried to find some time at the end, but just maybe lost out a little bit of grip. Nobody was really improving too much towards the end of the session. But if we look at Leclerc and Hamilton's fast laps, you can see that they both have very, very similar trajectories, and they both follow very similar patterns. Leclerc just always that little bit ahead, always got that extra tenth or so. Hamilton was pretty much matching Leclerc through the first sector. In fact, Hamilton, you could even argue, slightly quicker. Well, was quicker around turn 3. You can look at the track map there. Was quicker through turn 3, Hamilton, and was ahead of Leclerc going into the second sector. But it was turn 7 again. It is the trickiest corner on the track, to be fair. Turn 7, you can see Leclerc just carries way more speed through turn 7. Lewis also losing out a little bit on the braking down towards turn 8, just lifts off the throttle a touch earlier than Leclerc does. Leclerc kind of going into sector 3 still with his pedal down to the floor. Hamilton lifting off just as they get into the sector 3. So Hamilton losing out a little bit there as well. Turn 7 was the turning point. Hamilton dropping behind Leclerc for the first time, and then Leclerc getting that extra 10th as they go down in towards turn 8. Hamilton carrying actually a little bit more speed, maybe got a bit more of a toe down the back straight, but never able to close the gap properly to Leclerc, ending up that sort of 10th and a half behind him. What software am I using? This is a GM Tempo. He won't tell me what software. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat, to be honest. I was looking at the chat. This is GM Tempo, which used to be F1 Tempo, but it's now GM Tempo. Just for fun. Who am I supporting? I think the papaya often gives it away. Although sometimes I have got a Red Bull top, so you will sometimes see me wearing a Red Bull top. This is an interesting one. George Russell, when was he on the medium tire? Was it just in the first session? Yeah, see, he was very, very adamant he wanted the medium tire again towards the end was George Russell. I haven't looked at any of these telemetries, by the way. This is what I do normally before we go live, but now I'm just doing it live with you. Who else do we want? Do we want to see any other ones before we move on? Before we get into where people have qualified, what they look like, how we're doing with the sessions. I think Bortoletto might be an interesting one. Did he just improve? A little bit of an ebb and a flow from Bortoletto. In fact, his fastest time, lap 11 of the session. When will the race start? We're about 25 minutes from the start of the Grand Prix. Bortoleto versus Hulkenberg is a weird one. What happened to Nico? Bortoleto just had it, yeah. Again, Hulkenberg, as soon as you have like a lap like this, as soon as I see this kind of bump, where it's like a particularly slow lap, where it wasn't because you were just slowing down or, you know, taking it a bit easy, but instead you made a mistake somewhere. Hulkenberg made a mistake here, 121.2. And then you look at the 119.3 from Bortoleto at the same kind of point in the session. That's an interesting one from Nico Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg's starting to get sort of outdone pretty consistently by Gabriel Bortoleto at this point. Do it with Hadjar. Hadjar will be an interesting one to have a look at. Only 2 laps from Isaac. Didn't we have a look at Isaac's already? I think he made a mistake in turn 7. Yeah, we had a look at Isaac's already. Made a mistake in turn 7. I remember looking at this now. I remember someone else. Yeah, Hadjar made a mistake in turn 7 as well. What happened to Lawson? I think he also made a mistake in turn 7 as well. Let's have a little gander. Yeah. Not as big a mistake as Hadjar in turn 7, actually. But then maybe it was also a little bit behind Hadjar anyway. Let's have a little look. So Hadjar in white. Yeah, Hadjar just had the advantage through the middle sector anyway. Both of them made mistakes through turn 7. Lawson didn't slow down anywhere near as much as Hadjar did, though. Oh, sorry, Hadjar didn't slow down anywhere near as much as Lawson did. So Lawson actually lost even more time through turn 7 compared to his teammate. But both of them lost a huge amount of time in turn 7. Hadjar a little bit later on the brakes in everywhere, really. Hadjar just a bit more comfortable inside of the car by the looks of things. Maybe running a bit more downforce, but then also had a better straight line speed. So I think just more comfortable inside of the car, Isaac Hadjar, because got a higher top speed. Let's have a little look. Speed. Oh, they don't have the speed thing on here anymore. Oh, no, I was looking at the speed one. Idiot. Speed, higher top speed. Down towards turn 1, higher top speed down towards turn 4, higher top speed down towards turn 8. So Hadjar just got way better top speed, to be honest. Maps and graphs morning is my favorite. That's what we get after qualifying, looking at maps and graphs. But it's good. You can see Hadjar, Lawson was only quicker through turn 3, but then was actually slower in terms of top speed. I think because maybe Lawson probably had to brake a little bit earlier than Isaac Hadjar here. Then Lawson was a little bit quicker on the exit of 6, but made a bigger mistake than Hadjar through 7. Both of the RBs making a mistake through 7, so not really much to compare there, apart from the fact that Lawson dipped way below Hadjar's speed on the exit, and then Hadjar slower out of turn 7, but then again was quicker by the time they got to turn 8, or had a higher speed at least by the time they got to turn 8, and then was just way quicker through the final sector as well. Yeah, Lawson ended up 3.5 tenths adrift of Isaac Hadjar overall, so neither of the RBs having a brilliant middle sector was effectively the reason that they had a nasty run-in with the Q1 out from yesterday. All the drivers are struggling with turn 7 in Monza. It is the most difficult corner, to be honest with you, because you're running such low downforce. You have to, right? You have to run such low downforce, because otherwise you'll be at such a disadvantage when it comes to the straights, like down towards turn 1, turn 3, even all the way down to turn 8, that back straight down from turn 10 to turn 11. Like, there's so many just huge high speed sections that you have to run really, really low drag. And that just means when you do have turn 4, turn 5, you're already out of shape a little bit because you've had to brake really, really hard for turn 4, chicane through turn 5, and then turn 6, turn 7 kind of come at you quite quickly. And that's where, like, turn 6 is a little bit wider. It's not quite as sort of jagged, want for a better word. But turn 7 is really quite sharp. And there's not a lot of runoff there because, well, you're into the gravel, basically. There isn't any runoff. There's just gravel on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, sorry. And yeah, turn 7 is by far and away the trickiest corner on the track. We've got a trigonometry test on Wednesday. Charles Leclerc win. Chances not applicable. Not for me. Should we have a little look at the qualifying board as we are seeing some cars coming out onto the track? And in fact, I'm going to get my stream loaded up just in case there's anything that happens and I need to witness. Here we go. There we are. So, Verstappen starts on pole position. Will he be there? I think just if Verstappen comes out of turn 6 still in the lead, then he'll probably have a good chance of holding on to it at least until the first couple of pit stops. I don't know, actually. Just with the DRS, the DRS is not a massive factor. Straight line speed advantage doesn't really go either way with the Red Bulls or the McLarens. It's pretty close. I don't know. I'd like Verstappen to be in it, but it just feels like the McLaren car is so much better this season, you know. But Max Verstappen has been able to pull out some pretty spectacular Grand Prix. You know, Japanese Grand Prix was probably one of his best victories ever, just in terms of how he was able to deal with everything that was thrown at him, and the fact that, again, I know it was early on in the season and maybe the McLaren car wasn't quite as quick as it is now because they have refined it as the season has progressed, but I feel like Verstappen's win there was just something special. If he can win in Monza, be a very, very solid win from Max Verstappen. Very, very impressive indeed. Lando Norris, though, Oscar Piastri behind. Lando can't really afford to not be winning Grand Prix, you know. Okay, if he wins, he gets a... Well, let's say Lando Norris wins and Piastri comes second. That's a 7-point advantage. They would go to his favour from the 34 that he's already behind, but they can't really afford to come second and third, because if Norris comes second, Piastri comes third, yes, he's still beaten his teammate, but he's only gaining 3 points on him, and that 34 only becomes 31 rather than 27, and it's like all of the things start adding up in Oscar Piastri's favour. The closer and closer we get to the end of the season, and the less and less Lando Norris wins, obviously, is better and better for Oscar Piastri. So it'd be interesting to see how the two McLarens play this as well, and whether or not they'll be on the same strategy. This has been a talking point as well, the fact that Lando Norris really, you look at a couple of those wins just before the summer break, they kind of just came because he was on the better strategy. He wasn't necessarily the quicker of the two McLarens in all of those victories that he has so far this season. I know Piastri has 7 to Lando Norris has 5. But it could be more like, say, 9-3 in favour of Piastri, realistically, had Lando Norris not been put on a slightly different strategy than Oscar Piastri in a couple of those Grand Prix. So whether or not Piastri will also get the benefit of a slightly different strategy, whether they've talked to the drivers over the summer break and they've said, look, we're going to have to do a little bit like what Mercedes did with Hamilton and Rosberg, where we put you on the same strategy, and even if, you know, it kind of costs you a little bit, and that's the way it's got to be, otherwise we'll be seen to be advantaging one driver over another. If you see Piastri and Norris's ghost car review, you'll see Piastri's speed. Oh yeah, Piastri's not slow. Like, it was very, very tight between the top 3, really. We could have certainly thrown Piastri's lap time into the mix when we were just reviewing Verstappen versus Norris there. It's very, very tight between that top three. Charles Leclerc will be hoping for a little bit better than in the Netherlands. Probably should have got a podium in the Netherlands, Charles Leclerc. It felt like the Ferrari was certainly on for at least getting close to a podium place, if not quite getting there. It was a really weird one from Leclerc. Went through phases where in the Dutch Grand Prix felt like he was really, really on top of things. Had that little clash with George Russell as well, the safety car playing against his favor. Then also the safety car with his teammate also playing against his favor. So things just really didn't go Charles Leclerc's way in the Netherlands, but was possibly on pace worth a podium. Obviously that would have meant Isaac Hadjar wasn't on there, so not really the one. I think a podium today for Leclerc, it's going to be really tough. I can't see him getting past both of the McLaren cars. And I don't know if I can see Verstappen dropping back 3 positions all the way down to 4. It's not very Verstappen to fall back that many places. Leclerc, if you're gonna go for like an outside shout at a podium, why not Leclerc? I think more likely Leclerc. I was going to say than Russell, but do I? I quite like the Mercedes car this weekend. It was very quick on the medium tyres in qualifying yesterday. It's a very Mercedes circuit as well. I know it's not very cool. It would be better if it was a little bit colder for the Mercedes team, but last time we were on a track like this, you look back at Canada, George Russell went on to win it, so I could see George Russell having a good race as well. I think that top 5 is all very competitive, and strategy could play a huge factor in that sort of top 5 swapping around and possibly getting onto the podium finishes. Like Norris versus Piastri are the ones to obviously go, right, they should be guaranteed. They're in the McLarens, etc. But Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, wouldn't surprise me if any of those 3 are also on the podium, and maybe even a McLaren off of the podium by the end of the Grand Prix, depending on strategies, and especially if there's like a safety car or something, you never really know, do you? Kimi Antonelli starts in 6th place, his home Grand Prix. Much better from him. It was feeling like it was going to be a tough weekend, wasn't it? It was going to be one of those weekends that just really wasn't going to click. Beached himself in free practice. Obviously, the ghosts of coming here last year and putting himself in the gravel in a Mercedes last time around as well. I was like, okay. Think he got the monkey off his back, though, by the time we actually got into qualifying proper. P6, just behind his teammate, kind of where he's expected to be. Can I see him beating any of the drivers in front of him? Not really. I think he's just in a bit of a weird spot, is Kimi Antonelli. Like, you look at the Drivers' Championship, he's on 64 points, so is Alex Albon. But, like, realistically, would you expect Kimi Antonelli to be ahead of any of the drivers ahead of him in the standings? Like, would you expect him to be ahead of Hamilton or Leclerc or Russell? No, not at all. I think Antonelli is exactly where he should be in the championship, just not necessarily with the points he maybe should have in the championship, which is where it kind of feels a bit weird. But today, I feel like starting 6th place, finishing 6th place would be more than good enough for Kimi Antonelli, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be too negative about his performance if he did just start and finish where he is. Same with Gabriel Bortoleto, really. Like, again, you look at the cars in front of Gabriel Bortoleto and you go, can he realistically challenge any of those cars in front? Like, on pace, if they are able to deliver the pace that we're expecting from them. I just don't think Gabriel Bortoleto really has much of a chance of fighting with the Mercedes, Ferraris and McLarens. I suppose that's what you get when you qualify best to the rest, right? The only thing that you can do is hope that you can maintain position as an absolute sort of minimum. And then anything beyond that is just an absolute dream if you can finish in 5th or 6th whilst in a stakes hour car. There's going to have been some reason, right? There'll be something that is a little bit untoward maybe, or some drivers bumping into one another that allows you to do so. His manager, Fernando Alonso, is starting alongside him. That's a nice little pairing, isn't it? Bortoleto 7, Alonso 8. both lining up on that fourth row of the grid. Will there be Fernando Alonso just giving his protege a little bit of room, maybe through turn 1, turn 2? Or do you think the competitor, the competitive side of Fernando Alonso just doesn't allow that kind of thing to happen? It could be anybody. It could be his mum in the car next to him, and he'd still push her wide, make sure that her life is an absolute misery. Like, it just feels like Fernando Alonso's so competitive, it would not matter who is in that car beside him. He wants to get a move on them as quickly as he possibly can. Then we've got Yuki Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton. Obviously, Hamilton dropping from 5th down to 10th, that 5-place grid penalty. Tsunoda starting 9th. Both of those will be looking at least getting ahead of Bortoleto and Alonso. Like, realistically, they are in a car that should be ahead of those two, generally speaking. But it's not been that easy when things have gone like that this year. I think the midfield is very, very competitive. There's a lot of DRS trains, and there's a lot of shenanigans where you do have to be really quite quick in comparison to the car in front of you to actually get that position on them. So I think it might be a tough afternoon for Yuki Tsunoda, and particularly Lewis Hamilton behind, because Hamilton is going to be expected to be at least 6th, really, because you look at Antonelli, Bortoleto, Alonso, Tsunoda, they should be drivers that Hamilton is beating. And the fact that Lewis Hamilton also qualified in 5th shows that the Ferrari car has got the pace to be up there with those top drivers, the drivers that he's with in the Drivers' Championship that we just mentioned before. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Lewis Hamilton there in 10th place, and I don't think it's going to be as easy as many people are expecting for him to move that far forwards. Ollie Behrman starting in 11th place. He absolutely loves 11th place as Ollie Behrman. He's there once again. Can he get up into the points? I feel like there's an opportunity for Behrman to shuffle up into the points. If I had to choose a driver to fall out of the points, though, is when I start to go, okay, maybe not. But then Ollie Behrman finishing at 11th place once again. It's very Ollie Behrman, isn't it? Nico Hülkenberg starting in 12th place once again, outdone by his rookie teammate. Starts 5 places behind Gabriel Bortoleto. Been a big gap in terms of the pace that those two have shown when it's come to qualifying in particular. Like, Gabriel Bortoleto really is shining at the moment when it comes to qualifying in comparison to Nico Hülkenberg, and manages to get those qualified positions done and dusted where you'd kind of expect Hülkenberg to be able to do it, but Gabriel Bortoleto doing it instead. It's very, very impressive from him. Sainz and Albon, I think we expected a lot more. I think they expected a lot more in the Williams cars, but starting in 13th and 14th place. Again, I think it's going to be tricky for them in the midfield. Esteban Ocon, the same kind of deal. Lance Stroll starting in 16th place. Colapinto, Lawson, Hadjar, Gasly, all taking penalties, all dropping out in Q1 and deciding, you know what, it's actually just maybe the time of the season where we're just going to get some of these penalties out of the way. We're going to shuffle around some parts that we want to be available to us once we leave the European part of the calendar and we get back into some of the races in the US and the Middle East, and we head towards them. Getting those parts locked in now, taking the penalties now, means that you can not have to take those penalties later. You know, we often see teams taking penalties. Sort of Brazil is a particular track where a lot of teams decide to take penalties because they know that they can get some overtaking done. Hadjar, Lawson, Colapinto, Gasly, they won't have to hopefully take those penalties then, so they gain the advantage a little bit later on down the line. Whether that will play in their favour later on down the line just means that this weekend becomes a little bit of a redundant one for them, doesn't it? You know, I can't imagine we're going to see the 2 Alpines or the 2 RBs anywhere near the point scoring places, unfortunately for them, because, you know, after last weekend in the constructor standings, they're in a couple of points behind Aston Martin, the Racing Bulls cars. It's getting very tight indeed. I mean, Aston Martin will be looking at Fernando Alonso and the fact that he could get some points on the board and close that 18-point gap to Williams. 18 points, though, still a considerable chunk of points. I know that Hülkenberg and Hadjar managed to get themselves podiums, but It's not every weekend that we see one of these midfield cars in the podium places. How are we feeling, though? Are we ready to go? We're 5 minutes out from the start of this Grand Prix. Let me get the final couple of bits loaded up in the background, just to make sure we are live. A few people watching on the short form, a few people watching over on Twitch. Thank you guys all for joining. The main bulk, of course, over on the YouTube stream. If you could hit the like button on the stream, that'd be absolutely amazing. Maybe even the subscribe button too. That would be absolutely wonderful. And let's get everything set up for the Monza Grand Prix. The Italian Grand Prix. Have we got everything loaded? Boom. We are ready and raring to go. Oh my goodness, there's already some investigations. Pit exit incident involving Fernando Alonso. Practice start infringement. And a practice start infringement for Lance Stroll. Don't know what the Aston Martins were doing with their practice starts, but it is not within the regulations by the looks of things. Hopefully that will just be a fine and possibly an investigation after the Grand Prix. I would hate to see Fernando Alonso get a penalty before the race has even begun. Who do I like most, Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton? I mean, at the moment or like forever, I feel like they're both just incredibly good. I've not been a fan of either, like ever, to be honest. So Lewis Hamilton, British. I've watched more of Hamilton's racing, I'll be honest. By the time I got into Formula One, Schumacher was kind of on the way out. I only saw his time at Mercedes. I never really got to watch his time at Ferrari live. Obviously, I've gone back and watched bits and pieces since, but probably have to say Hamilton just because I've seen more of Lewis Hamilton's driving more than anything else. But we are almost there, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get this screen loaded as well so I can actually see the Grand Prix myself. Pop the track map down there. Chances of does Charles have a chance today? Never say never with him, you know. He managed to win it last year, and I'd have said no last year as well, but I think it's even trickier for him this year than it was last year. I think there's a lot more precedent for the McLarens to be a lot quicker than they were last year here. Verstappen is also in the mix a little bit more than he was last year. I don't think Charles is going to be able to do it. But I'm more than happy if I'm proved wrong and we get to see another Ferrari win in Monza, because they're always just a little bit special, aren't they? When you see a Monza victory. My favourite Monza victory, of course, Daniel Ricciardo taking to the top step here for McLaren. Sort of his farewell to the McLaren team, really, wasn't it? It was the one race that season where really shone, and okay, yeah, we had to have Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen wipe each other out, but a victory is a victory nonetheless. And this was also at a time when McLaren victories were fairly few and far between. So absolutely beautiful win from Daniel Ricciardo. It was probably my favourite one. Here we are then. Max Verstappen inside of that Red Bull car at the front of the grid, getting himself set up. We are within a minute now of the start of the formation lap. The tyres are on the cars. The tyre blankets being removed as we speak. The Ferrari fans all over the grandstands. It is a sea of red in Monza, as you would expect. The Tifosi in full force. 10 seconds by the looks of the tag heuer clock. And the formation lap is set to get underway. It is 3 o'clock. The green lights are shown. And the formation lap does indeed get underway. We are looking at Max Verstappen leading the cars down towards turn 1. Looking very dry. Out on track. Not likely to be any kind of rain or overcast at any point. Dan No Skill, of course, out there in Monza. Keep an eye out for him. If you manage to spot Dan No Skill, let me know. Of course, me and him, part of the Crash Happy crew. If you don't know about that, I'm just going to take the formation lap to let you know. Brand new podcast. It's me, Mr. V, Mr. Pulse, Dan No Skill, and Formula Duck. The 5 of us working together on a brand new Formula One podcast. So if you want to get involved in that, we just hit 1,000 subscribers after releasing just 1 episode. So it's absolutely flying. But if you like the sound of that and you like any of the 5 of us, first link in the description is that podcast. And something that we have all been very excited to get started on. But having plugged that, also let's say, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and let's focus in on the formation lap then. Max Verstappen just coming under the bridge down towards turn 8 now. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri also warming their tyres behind. The front 13 drivers all starting on the hard compound tyre. On the medium compound tyre, sorry. I was looking at the hard compound tyre on Alex Albon's car, the first driver to start on the hards. Liam Lawson starting on the soft compound tyre as well for the Racing Bulls team. Verstappen coming around turn 11, just closes the pack up a little bit. Doesn't want to be stationary for too long inside of that Red Bull car. Lets those tyres cool down a touch. But Pierre Gasly only just coming down towards turn 8 now. So Verstappen really backing up the pack. And will slot into that first. Oh! Nico Hülkenberg, box to retire the car. Box to retire the car is the call from Nico Hülkenberg. And Stake Sauber are down a car already. So Hülkenberg does indeed come into the pits. What's happened there at Sauber? I'll keep you updated. Hülkenberg on the radio. Are you serious? Doesn't know what's happened. Clearly something on the formation lap not looking very good at all. And they have indeed pulled him into the pits. They're putting the... Oh no! Hülkenberg out. So Sainz moves up. Albon, Ocon, Stroll, Colapinto, Lawson, Hadjar, Gasly will all gain a position because of that. But technical problem for Nico Hülkenberg, and he is out of the Grand Prix before it's even started. The last couple of cars just taking their spot onto the grid. Colapinto and Lawson making their way down. Hadjar and Gasly, of course, starting from the pit lane. Waiting for them to be stationary. Green flag is waved at the back of the grid, and we'll catch up with Nico Hülkenberg in a moment because we need to be focused now on Max Verstappen down towards turn 1. 5 red lights, and we are underway here in Monza. Let's see what Max Verstappen can do, though. Piastri getting right under the rear wing of the Red Bull straight away. Max Verstappen comes to the right-hand side of the grid. Lando Norris is on the grass, trying to get that position from Verstappen. Goes up the inside of Verstappen. Verstappen's pushed wide at turn 2. It's chaos as Piastri has also been overtaken by Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc's managed to get that move done. Verstappen did cut turn 1 there. Be interesting to see what the stewards say about that. Piastri trying to get back past the Ferrari. Lando Norris side by side with Verstappen. Leclerc has a little look as well, but Norris not able to make a move this time. Verstappen through turn 4 and turn 5 still in the lead, but is now right under pressure from Charles Leclerc. Piastri trying to go around the outside of turn 7 and manages to do it well. Piastri gets that move done on Charles Leclerc through turn 6 and turn 7. He's back up into 3rd place and right under the rear wing of his teammate, Lando Norris. What's he doing? He put me on the grass and then he's just cut the corner, says Lando Norris on the radio. And his engineers will be looking into that as soon as they possibly can. Max Verstappen, though, still leads this race. Norris, Piastri, Leclerc are top four. Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto have managed to get the better of Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli's fallen all the way down to 10th place. Lewis Hamilton up into 8th past Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda's managed to stay where he is in 9th. Behrman still 11th. Sainz, Albon now in 12th and 13th. But here we go then, down towards turn 1. Lando Norris gets the slipstream from Max Verstappen, is going to be able to get past before he goes down there. Oscar Piastri also tries to have a little look at Max Verstappen as well. Charles Leclerc, though, is right there with Piastri, and Lando Norris has been able to take the lead of this Grand Prix, and Piastri is going to lose position to Charles Leclerc once again. Piastri down into 4th place. Leclerc peels to the right-hand side of the track, looking at Verstappen. Verstappen, though, moves across and is able to defend, and so Charles Leclerc keeps that position from Piastri as well. The DRS, though, is now activated. There is dust flying through turn 4 and turn 5. Somebody's gone off there. I think it might have been Colapinto or maybe even Hadjar going across the dirt. George Russell now right under the rear wing of Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris leading this Grand Prix. DRS, though, for Max Verstappen. It is not done and dusted yet for Lando Norris. Piastri on the radio. Leclerc is all over the place under braking. I had to avoid him. Charles Leclerc getting a little bit of a tailing off from Oscar Piastri. Piastri right under the rear wing of the Scuderia Ferrari, who's up into the podium places. If he can hang on to him through turn 11, though, as he has just done. Charles Leclerc trying to break the toe from Piastri behind. Piastri, though, keeping underneath the rear wing of Leclerc. They both come to the inside of the track. Piastri's going to try and go around the outside of turn 1. Isn't able to do it. Big lockup from Charles Leclerc and also from George Russell behind. And Piastri then closed door from Charles Leclerc and has to avoid running into the back of the Ferrari as he falls into 4th place still. Leclerc also moving a little bit further behind Max Verstappen. Verstappen and Norris elongating that gap. Gabriel Bortoleto has a little look at George Russell and has a little go. George Russell just about able to hold onto 5th place. Bortoleto is not hanging about here. He is up into 6th and is looking to get even better still. Fernando Alonso in 7th place at the moment. Hamilton in 8th, Tsunoda in 9th, Kimi Antonelli down in 10th place, Ollie Behrman in 11th, of course he is. Though Oscar Piastri right under the rear wing of Charles Leclerc once again. Lando Norris also trying to keep Max Verstappen at bay ahead. It's a little bit of a gap behind Max Verstappen now. Charles Leclerc having to defend from Oscar Piastri and costing them both time to the front runners. Lando Norris trying to break that toe from Max Verstappen. Verstappen, though, DRS wide open, has the advantage. Verstappen looks to the right-hand side of the track. He's going to try and go around the outside. Lando Norris breaks very late into turn 1, but can't keep Max Verstappen at bay. Verstappen takes back the lead of this Grand Prix. Big lockup from Lando Norris into turn 1 as he was trying his best to break as late as possible, but Verstappen gets away from him, and Verstappen actually running away from him through turn 3, gets to turn 4 and turn 5 pretty comfortably. Piastri not able to make a move on Charles Leclerc this time around either. So Max Verstappen back up into the lead of this Grand Prix. Lando Norris down into 2nd once again. And then we have Leclerc and Piastri still behind in that order. Piastri on the radio. He went to defend, he went long, and Piastri thinks that Charles Leclerc needs to give that position back to him from their little tete-a-tete down towards turn 1. Hasn't given it back yet. Piastri still under the rear wing of him. Some investigations ongoing, though. Verstappen and Norris under investigation. Tsunoda and Hamilton also. But we are watching this top 4 because it is interchanging lap upon lap. Lando Norris, I think, is outside of DRS range of Max Verstappen there. It's going to be very tight indeed as to whether he's able to get inside the DRS realm. He is not. No DRS for Lando Norris down to turn 1. And the Red Bull of Verstappen doing a favour for Oscar Piastri here. Piastri's still stuck behind Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton now making a move on Fernando Alonso. And Hamilton up into 7th place. Fernando Alonso has to give that position back to his old McLaren teammate. Let's have a little look at this start once again then. Lando Norris gets an incredible launch. Brilliant from him. Verstappen has to come across to defend from it. Norris then pushed onto the grass. Verstappen then very late on the brakes. Goes to the escape road. Gabriel Bortoleto had to do the same. Others all kind of had to cut through turn 1 but didn't want to disappear through turn 2. And all 4 of the front runners looking at one another down towards turn 4 was incredibly close, that pack. George Russell trying to keep himself part of it as well. Verstappen, though, just didn't quite get the launch that Lando Norris did. Norris with an incredibly quick launch. Piastri. And Lando Norris. Well, Max saying that Lando broke very late on purpose, pushed him onto the gravel possibly, as Piastri now has another look at Charles Leclerc down towards turn 1, round the outside into turn 2. Piastri's going to have the position and is going to be able to close the door on Leclerc. Does indeed. Piastri back up into 3rd place, then tries to break the toe as they go through turn 3. Goes to the other side of the track. Now 3.5 seconds behind Lando Norris, though, Oscar Piastri, but some clean air to run into. Piastri back up into 3rd. Made a very nice move on Leclerc. Just moved to the left-hand side of the track as they're running down it. Had the advantage on the brakes as well. Broke that a little bit later than the Ferrari and just drove around the outside of turn 1. Up the inside of turn 2. Took that position. Broke the toe as well. And now running down towards turn 8 in the podium places once again. And George Russell has been looking at those two squabbling in front of him and hunting, waiting for an opportunity. Maybe it's now that opportunity as Charles Leclerc has moved back down into 4th place. Piastri trying to get outside of DRS range of the Ferrari. Has been able to get 0.8 of a second ahead of Leclerc, but Leclerc is indeed going to have DRS down towards turn 1. The Scuderia Ferrari with its rear wing wide open. DRS not a massive advantage here, but an advantage nonetheless as Lewis Hamilton now has a little look at Gabriel Bortoleto and has the straight line speed advantage. The Ferrari able to get past the stake car before they even really got down towards turn 1. Lewis Hamilton now up into 6th from 10th. And Hamilton back into the pack of cars where he really should be running during this Grand Prix. Lap 7 of 53 completed. Bortoleto back down into 7th. Fernando Alonso 8th. And it's Kimi Antonelli who's the big loser from the top teams at the moment. Dropped all the way down to 10th after the start of that Grand Prix. Max Verstappen going quick though. The Red Bull dominant. It's looking very comfortable for Max Verstappen at the front. He's a couple of seconds ahead of Lando Norris now, setting fast laps as well as Max Verstappen. And Oscar Piastri then also, because he had those squabbles with Leclerc, lost so much time to the two in front. So it does feel like Verstappen versus Norris for the victory at the moment. Oscar Piastri, though, not so far adrift that he's completely out of contention. George Russell, though, is the first driver with DRS, as Charles Leclerc has dropped outside of the DRS range of the McLaren in front of him. Is George Russell going to be able to have a look? Not this time around. Still 0.6 of a second adrift of Charles Leclerc in 4th spot. Lewis Hamilton up into 6th now, is escaping away from Gabriel Bortoleto. Bortoleto trying to use that DRS behind the Ferrari to keep Fernando Alonso at bay. And once again, we have the Bortoleto-Alonso battle to have a little watch and see how that goes. Max Verstappen, though, still leads. Sonoda is outside of DRS range of that Bortoletto Alonso pairing, and then Kimi Antonelli is putting Yuki Tsunoda under pressure now. Can Kimi Antonelli get back past the Red Bull powered car? Here's a replay of Isaac Hadjar, who's been fighting with the Alpines and just broke a little bit too late into turn one, taking the escape road and losing out pretty considerably in the Racing Bulls car. Still running down in 18th place. Ocon and Stroll also under investigation at this point. Lance Stroll has got a couple of investigations going his way. Charles Leclerc being caught up by George Russell. Quicker and quicker still. Was 6/10 last lap. Is now 4/10 between Leclerc and Russell right underneath the rear wing of the Ferrari as they go through turn two. George Russell looking very competitive indeed. All of a sudden, inside of that Mercedes car, was just kind of watching Leclerc and Piastri squabble earlier on. Couldn't quite get amongst that battle, but now Charles Leclerc has dropped out of DRS range of Piastri ahead, and George Russell starting to reel in the Ferrari in front of him. Lewis Hamilton also a couple of seconds adrift behind in 6th place, so Russell knows he can afford to make a maneuver without having somebody right there to take advantage if it all goes wrong. And there is a 5-second time penalty for Esteban Ocon for forcing a driver off the track. Let's see if I can just quickly grab that investigation for you. So that is Esteban Ocon, 5-second time penalty, forcing another driver off the track. Lance Stroll is also under investigation for an incident. With that. So Lance Stroll was the driver that was pushed off of the track by Esteban Ocon. And Fernando Alonso, not under investigation. Everybody else is already processed. So that is the only one that was pending. George Russell again, now 0.3 of a second behind Charles Leclerc. Getting closer and closer is George Russell, but not quite there yet. But Ocon, yeah, down in 14th place, 5-second penalty. George Russell has a little look at Leclerc through turn 4 and turn 5, but still not quite within touching distance of the Scuderia ahead. And here's that replay of it. Lance Stroll trying to make a move on Esteban Ocon. Moves to the right-hand side of the track as they break down in towards turn 4. And Esteban Ocon just moves to the right-hand side of the track and, yeah, just pushed Lance Stroll a little bit close to the grass there, and Lance Stroll having to take to the escape roads to make sure that they didn't collide with one another. I think Liam Lawson has pitted for the RB team as well. He has indeed. Lawson, the first driver to make a swap of tyres, possibly gambling on going all the way to the end on those. But everybody who we're watching still on the medium compound tyre as we head into lap 11 of the Grand Prix for George Russell and Charles Leclerc. Leclerc still under pressure from Russell, is able to escape just a couple attempts or so in the final sector is Charles Leclerc, which just means George Russell isn't quite there when it comes to battling down towards turn 1. Max Verstappen, another fast lap for him, a 1:23.0. Means that Verstappen now leads this Grand Prix by 3.5 seconds. Piastri then another 4.5 seconds behind in his McLaren. It's looking like Max Verstappen, now that he's taken that lead back from Lando Norris once again, is actually looking very comfortable indeed. Max Verstappen just hoping that nobody else causes any kind of problems for him. A safety car or something like that, of course, squeezes the pack together again. But at the moment, Verstappen nearly 8 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri. Not what we would have expected to see at this point in the Grand Prix. Telling Lando Norris and Piastri plan A, so they are going for the original plan, maybe going for sort of a pit stop around lap 20-ish on the medium tyres. George Russell is starting to struggle a little bit, I think, in the dirty air of Charles Leclerc, as those tyres do begin to wane as they get halfway through their expected life cycle inside of this Grand Prix. George Russell, 0.8 of a second now adrift of Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton is actually closing in a touch. Hamilton 1.2 seconds adrift of George Russell. So Russell's pace starting to fall away a touch and allowing Lewis Hamilton the opportunity to just close in and maybe get himself back up into 5th spot. Of course, where Lewis Hamilton did qualify yesterday, dropped back 5 positions to 10th. Has clawed his way back up to 6th place. Had to deal with Tsunoda and Alonso and Bortoleto along the way. And interesting. And weird. Nico Hülkenberg just being confirmed as out. And Jonathan Wheatley trying to explain that it was just a better choice for the team with the components that they're running this weekend. They really didn't want to gamble on it blowing up in their face, taking a brand new engine as well inside of that car. If they would have run Hülkenberg at this kind of circuit as well, where it's super heavy on the engine, maybe could have put them at a disadvantage at a later date. And Nico Hülkenberg is sitting and watching, unfortunately. He's dropped out before we even got underway. And the team deciding that that was the best opportunity for Hülkenberg to keep that engine in working order for later races in the season. Of course, still 8 Grand Prix to run. We are 2/3 of the way through the Formula 1 season at this point. So still a lot of racing to go, and you can understand why the team not wanting to gamble one of their few engines away, especially when they were starting outside of the point scoring places. And we can see that it's now a little bit of a DRS train, particularly behind Yuki Tsunoda, Antonelli, Behrman, Sainz, Albon, Ocon, Stroll, all within DRS range of the car ahead of them. And this is the problem that you do have at Monza, is if you are in this kind of DRS train, with it all being about straight line speed, you're sort of saying to yourself, well, at least I can try and get a move on the car in front of me, but that car in front of you has also got DRS, and car in front of them's got DRS, so it becomes a little bit of just a train running through the pack. And actually, a bit negative about Yuki Tsunoda there, because he's also on the back of Gabriel Bortoleto. So Bortoleto is running around in 7th place, trying to hold on to an incredible finish for himself, but also meaning that Alonso, Tsunoda, Antonelli, Behrman, Sainz, Albon, Ocon, Stroll all just feel a bit trapped behind Gabriel Bortoleto at this point, and a train of 9 cars all waiting for an opportunity to do something. Does mean that we might have someone just decide against it and go for a pit stop. Bortoleto ahead of his manager. Yes, that's the other dynamic, isn't it? Fact that Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto, they often fly to races together. They have meetings together after the Grand Prix to discuss how it's been going. And Fernando Alonso is going to be able to give pretty detailed analysis of Gabriel Bortoleto this time around. He's going to be able to say, well, I was watching you go through turn 6. I was watching you go through turn 7. And, I'd suggest doing this, that, or the other. I mean, it's pretty perfect, right? Your manager literally sitting right behind you, being able to give you detailed feedback on every single lap of your Grand Prix because he was there to watch it with you. Bortoleto, though, running around in 7th place would be an incredible finish for him. Another big points haul, especially after Behrman got a good solid chunk of points last time around as well. That would really help Gabriel Bortoleto in the drivers' standings. In fact, we can have a little look at how the drivers' standings would look if we were to finish as it is right now. So in terms of the championship standings, Is it going to load? There it is. Oscar Piastri still leading, of course. Lando Norris would gain 3 points on his teammates. The gap will go down to 31 points between the two championship rivals, but still a 33-point haul for the McLaren team puts them above that 600-point threshold for the season. Again, 2/3 of the way through the campaign. 1,000 points is still certainly up for grabs, right? I think it's just about available to the McLaren team. They'd have to be basically perfect for the final 8 races, but even still. Max Verstappen, 230 points for him. Elongates that lead by 15 points to George Russell in 4th place. But the real movers and shakers down towards the bottom, really. You've got Nico Hülkenberg out of this Grand Prix. Hadjar on 37 as well, just locked in behind Alex Albon. Then Fernando Alonso would go up to 34, finally get himself back above Lance Stroll in the standings. And Gabriel Bortoleto, those 6 points would be massive for him, shaking him all the way up into 14th place in the standings as well. So Gabriel Bortoleto, I mean, if he can finish 7th, that would be absolutely brilliant. Get him back up ahead of Behrman in the standings. Also put him level on points with Gasly and Lawson at this point in the season as well. Carlos Sainz would drop down a position into 18th place, and even with Yuki Tsunoda in the points, he would still be 19th overall in the standings. Doesn't change anything in the constructor standings as it is at the moment, but just again just closes those gaps a little bit in the constructors between those midfield teams, and especially those midfield drivers in the driver standings. Really does change the dynamic that they're going to have over the last few races. There's Fred Vasseur for the Ferrari team, waiting and watching. When do they pit Leclerc? When do they pit Hamilton? As the gaps are starting to elongate, those drivers that were side by side with one another for the first few laps of this Grand Prix now settling in a touch. Lando Norris is 4.5 seconds adrift of Verstappen, then another 6 seconds to Oscar Piastri behind. Piastri nowhere near the pace of the 2 cars ahead of him, really. Max Verstappen still setting fast laps at this point. Charles Leclerc also 3.5 seconds adrift. Russell, who was right underneath the rear wing of the Ferrari, now over 1.5 seconds behind that leading Ferrari car. Lewis Hamilton was closing in on Russell, was getting to within 1 second of Russell. Now down to 2.5 seconds again. It's sort of everybody is just settled in for the rest of this stint by the looks of things. And Behrman on board with him, looking at Kimi Antonelli. But again, just everybody in a bit of a DRS train. Yuki Tsunoda slowing down a touch to put a gap between Alonso and himself, but still behind that, Tsunoda has that DRS train continuing on all the way down to Lance Stroll in 15th place. Remember, Esteban Ocon with a 5-second penalty also. Feels like we had a very, very exciting start to this Grand Prix. Everybody just settling in for a moment. Maybe just holding onto their tyres a touch, cooling down the engines a touch as well. They will be absolutely gasping for air at this point. Kimi overtakes Yuki for P9. Getting closer is Kimi Antonelli having a little look down towards turn 1. He does indeed. Kimi Antonelli goes for a move on Yuki Tsunoda, and Tsunoda has to then give that position because Antonelli maybe just catching Yuki Tsunoda a little bit asleep there. Tsunoda didn't really put up too much of a fight, and Antonelli on the brakes later than the Red Bull, down towards turn 1, has the inside line and carries the speed out of there as well. Antonelli up into 9th place and Tsunoda down into 10th. See what Antonelli can do from here. But the big loser, Antonelli, just kind of got mixed up in it at the start of the Grand Prix. It's so difficult when you're in the middle of the pack the way that he is. And and Carlos Sainz failing to follow the race director's instructions when it comes to the escape road. Carlos Sainz braking very late down towards turn 4 and didn't follow the escape road properly. did Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris also a little dip of his rear left tyre into the gravel at turn 7. And maybe these tyres just starting to wane a touch for the drivers towards the top end of the grid, as we're starting to see little mistakes creeping in from the drivers out there as Esteban Ocon pits. No, Ollie Bearman pits. Ollie Bearman trying to do the undercut from 11th place here. It feels like he's stuck behind Tsunoda and Antonelli and can't really get anywhere at this moment in time. Knows that points are available to him if he can just get that one position gained. Pit stop for Ollie Bearman, 3.3 seconds. Going to come out surely ahead of Liam Lawson still. It's going to have some fresh air to run into as Ollie Bearman. No, he's not going to come out ahead of Lawson, sorry. Lawson ahead of Ollie Bearman. So Bearman's going to have to deal with the Racing Bulls car of Liam Lawson. It's going to be a bit fiddly. There is a hell of a lot of gravel on the road at turn 7. Max Verstappen on the radio, just being told by GP to keep that advantage going, just eking out those tenths of a second every single lap. Now 5, nearly 6 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. They know that the Grand Prix isn't won yet as we go into lap 20, and pit stop at Red Bull. It's a last minute call for Yuki Tsunoda. The tyres just about out of the tyre blankets. They run themselves into the pit lane. Tsunoda does indeed pit. And Tsunoda covering off Ollie Bearman by the looks of things here. Ollie Bearman still stuck behind Liam Lawson. And a 2.3 second stop from Tsunoda is a very swift one indeed. Tsunoda now coming out of the pits. Lawson just coming across the start-finish line. And Tsunoda is going to come out ahead of Bearman, but also behind Liam Lawson. Lawson pitting very early on. It's already done 10 laps on those hard compound tyres, but Tsunoda is now stuck behind him. And actually, Ollie Bearman is right there behind Tsunoda. Tsunoda is still trying to warm up his tyres. The tyres are warm on Ollie Bearman's Haas, and Ollie Bearman's Haas is going to peel to the right-hand side of the track. Is going to have a go at Yuki Tsunoda and gets that move done. Just already having those tyres to temperature playing into Ollie Bearman's favour, and Ollie Bearman does indeed get up ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Here's Pierre Gasly, a replay of him going through turn 7 and dips his tyres onto the gravel as well. There's a lot of gravel on the inside of the track at turn 7 now. It's been sprayed up by those cars that are starting to run wide at turn 7. Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto come into the pits almost side by side with one another. The Aston Martin peels into his pits first. I think Alonso hoping to get the overtake done in the pit lane. Alonso stops. Bortoleto is a little bit slower. And Alonso is going to get the overtake done. Bortoleto loses a position to Fernando Alonso in the pit lane. And the Aston Martin pit crew can give themselves a pat on the back there, as Alonso and Bortoleto do come out side by side with Liam Lawson, actually. Bortoleto is going to lose out to Liam Lawson as well. That is not a good sign for Gabriel Bortoleto there. Fernando Alonso winning out massively in that pit stop. Fernando Alonso gaining the position then. And Alonso now ahead of Lawson and Bortoleto, has that car in between the two of them as well. So brilliant from Fernando Alonso, has to be said. Went into the pits, got right under the rear wing of Bortoleto, nearly hit into the back of Bortoleto. Very, very attacking from Fernando Alonso. And Bortoleto losing out in the pit stops, because by the time Bortoleto's tyres were on, Fernando Alonso had made his way past. And Alonso, yeah, just gains that 10 metres or so on the entry to the pit lane, being that little bit less cautious. And that's going to be something that they will discuss after the race, I'm sure. Alonso will tell Bortoleto from now on, every time you go into the pits, absolutely attack that pit entry. Verstappen now 6 seconds clear of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. I was expecting, Verstappen to be in the mix for the victory here, but Red Bull making it look comfortable at this point. Max Verstappen really clicking with this Red Bull car this weekend, and the extremes of the Monza track actually playing into the favour of Max Verstappen's Red Bull in and amongst all of this. Is Lando too far back for an undercut? Most certainly, yes. He's very far back. So is Piastri, though. 6 seconds the gap. Leclerc is another 6 seconds. Like, does feel like that 6 second margin there's something in it. The car's falling back to 6 seconds behind the other. Gabriel Bortoleto has been able to overtake Liam Lawson, by the way. I should have mentioned, but is now back behind Fernando Alonso, and still lost out that position though did Gabriel Bortoleto. And Fernando Alonso now running 15th, a little bit of clean air ahead of him. That'll also play into Alonso's favour, just allowing him to hold on to those tyres a bit better because he's got the air in front of him to run into rather than having to run into the fumes of other drivers like Bortoleto, Lawson, Behrman, Tsunoda are now doing. Ollie Behrman really needs to get past Liam Lawson here, but Lawson still within DRS range of Bortoleto, not allowing the Haas to get that DRS advantage. Has got the advantage on speed as Behrman gets right under the rear wing of Lawson, but can't quite make the move yet. Maybe down towards turn 4, he can have a little look at the Racing Bulls car. Ollie Behrman not able to make a move this time around as Max Verstappen starts the next lap of the Grand Prix. "30 laps left to run then. 24 out of 53 currently being completed. Gabriel Bortoleto right under the rear wing of Liam Lawson. Got that move done through turn 3. Foot to the floor. The extra grip inside of that Stakes Sauber car with the additional laps that were on those tyres. Oh, and Kimi Antonelli with a big lockup and runs into the runoff area at turn 4. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri still are podium places. Leclerc has dropped back into 4th place after causing Piastri a bit of a headache towards the beginning of this Grand Prix. George Russell still running in 5th. Hamilton still only a couple of seconds adrift of Russell. Sort of ebbs and flows between those two. Piastri with the fastest middle sector of anybody so far, but still 6 seconds adrift of Max Verstappen. They're all kind of matching one another's times, really. Verstappen 122.8, Norris 122.9, Piastri now with a 122.7, so gains a 10th, but when the gap is 6 seconds, a 10th isn't really too much, to be honest. And it's looking like the one-stop strategy is going to be the choice of most, unless there's a safety car or something. Looking at Max Verstappen's lead, and hesitant to say, but I think Max Verstappen will be comfortably running towards his 3rd victory of the season. Oh, Fernando Alonso. Oh, he is the unluckiest man alive, is Fernando Alonso. He's going slow down the back straight. Dan no skill, head in hands. He'll be crying at that point. I think he might even be sitting at that point on the racetrack as well. Fernando Alonso going slowly, and something's wrong inside of that Aston Martin car. I think he's going to have to peel into the pit lane. And after gaining that position on Bortoleto, doing so well to keep himself in contention. Points looked pretty much guaranteed. Has now come into the pit lane. And it looks like his race is over. Suspension failure. This is unbelievable, says Fernando Alonso. And it is unbelievable how unlucky this man can be. Let's have a little look then. Oh. Took to the curbs as he was coming around out of turn 10. And yeah, front right suspension just looks like it's completely and utterly drifted. And then everybody makes their way past him. Fernando Alonso once again has to settle in and drop into the pits out of this Grand Prix. Gabriel Bortoleto fans, Ollie Behrman fans, that has certainly played into your favour. Bortoleto now up into 15th. Behrman has been able to finally get past Liam Lawson up into 16th place. Tsunoda still stuck behind the Racing Bulls car. And looking at those cars ahead, you're looking at the gaps. Antonelli 9 seconds behind Hamilton. Just trying to see where Bortoleto is in comparison. So Bortoleto, 60 seconds off the race lead, 20 seconds for a pit stop. So Bortoleto would come out in and around. Yeah, it'd still be just a little bit ahead of Albon and Sainz as it is right now. But obviously Albon and Sainz would have the benefit of the tyres. Carlos Sainz under investigation as well. Considering plan A plus 15. Doing an additional 15 laps on the first stint of the race. That is crazy. I think it's because the medium tyres are still going pretty quick. You know, you look at Bortoleto at the front of that running pack, and actually Bortoleto is doing a 124 dead. Albon and Sainz, Albon on the hards anyway, but Sainz a 123.8. So it's going to be pretty tight actually, and maybe those cars that have pitted early have gone way too early by the sounds of things from McLaren's perspective. Carlos Sainz saying his front tyres are dead in traffic. Front tyres are dead in traffic. Talking about his teammate ahead of him there. As that traffic is Carlos Sainz. Maybe just trying to coax the Williams team into making a swap, possibly. I can't imagine that they're going to, but Carlos Sainz. Just, if you don't ask, you won't get. George Russell comes into the pits then, is the first of the front runners to really make a move. Be interesting to see where George Russell comes out in all of this then, because I think he's trying something a little bit different, and maybe Mercedes have seen a gap for him to come out into. Going to come out behind Isaac Hadjar, but maybe ahead of the two Alpines. Well, hopefully for George Russell ahead of the two Alpines. Yeah, George Russell does indeed come out just behind Isaac Hadjar, who has yet to have pitted. George Russell with a few seconds to run into, just ahead of the two Alpines. I mean, if that was the plan from Mercedes, they executed it perfectly. And Lando Norris, what are your thoughts about continuing until we put a soft tyre on? Wow. So the soft compound tyre looking like it might be a racing tyre this weekend. Lawson battling with Yuki Tsunoda, and there's touch. They do touch, the two Red Bull powered cars, Tsunoda and Lawson touching wheels. And Tsunoda on the radio, what is he doing? Tsunoda is ahead of Lawson once more. Lawson, though, did collide with the rear tyre of Tsunoda. And Tsunoda gaining that position up into 17th place. Lawson goes to the back of the pack once again. Fernando Alonso and Nico Hülkenberg are the two drivers who have dropped out of the Grand Prix so far. Verstappen leading 6 seconds. Kimi Antonelli comes into the pits at his home Grand Prix. 2.9 second stop for the Italian, and let's see where he's going to come out in all of this. His teammate George Russell goes by. So does Colapinto and Gasly. Oh, just going to move this. And maybe that's why Mercedes decided to pit that a little bit early, because actually Antonelli comes out only just ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. So another very well-timed pit stops from the Mercedes crew by the looks of things. They come out literally millimeters ahead of the driver they were aiming for. Kimi Antonelli, a little bit of weaving to try and get some temperature into those tyres. The front right tyre of Max Verstappen's Red Bull car is blistered beyond belief. It's almost ripping itself apart, but the Red Bull team continuing on nonetheless. Norris and Piastri also continuing on, and Norris looking at going onto the soft compound tyre later on in this Grand Prix as Oscar Piastri sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Don't worry, it's only a tenth or so quicker than Verstappen, so he's still 12 seconds adrift of the lead. It's not like Piastri is closing in and going to barrel into the cars in front of him anytime soon. Lando Norris was also a tenth of a second. And George Russell has just gone quickest of anybody on those hard compound tyres. So maybe now the teams at the front will be looking... Oh, track limits. Black and white flag for Kimi Antonelli as a track limits warning for Kimi Antonelli. He's had 3 track limits infringements as the Italian. Needs to be a little bit careful as to not pick up a penalty. Lando Norris, 0.3 quicker than Verstappen on this lap. But then Verstappen goes very quick in the final sector. So Lando Norris was about 0.3 quicker than Verstappen. So maybe the McLaren's deciding to get out of just nursing their tyres and actually put in some lap times as they head towards a possible pit. They're seeing George Russell putting in fast laps on the hard compound tyre and thinking maybe we don't need to just wait until the end of the Grand Prix to put on some soft compound tyres. The hard compound tyre might be the choice. Be interesting to see what they do though, because again, still 6 seconds adrift of Verstappen is Norris, and Norris to Piastri another 6 seconds, and Lando Norris would gain 3 points on Piastri here if it ended as it is, but 3 points is not a massive swing. Verstappen doing Piastri a favour more so than Norris really by winning this Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz in the pits for the Williams team comes back out again, and Carlos Sainz ahead of Tsunoda and Lawson. Tsunoda and Lawson really did cost themselves a considerable chunk of time, didn't they? Because Carlos Sainz getting ahead of Yuki Tsunoda there after the pit stops, and Tsunoda's going to feel pretty hard done by. Started inside of the points once again, and Tsunoda unlikely to finish in the points here for the Red Bull team. It's a replay of Franco Colapinto locking up in towards turn 1 and has to go across the gravel through turn 2. Tyres on Franco Colapinto's car starting to not quite give him the grip that he needs to make it through turn 1. There has been 31 laps on those medium compound tyres for Franco Colapinto, although exactly the same for the front runners. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, 31 laps completed, and moving on to lap 32. See what George Russell is doing then. A 122.659 from George Russell. 122.9 from Verstappen, 123.1 from Lando Norris. So George Russell was quicker, but not a considerable amount quicker. You can understand why the guys at the front are still sort of saying, well, I don't really want the hard compound tyre really, and I'm not going to gain that much time by going on to the hard compound tyre, so I'll just stick with what I've got right now. It's sort of eking out, especially if there's a safety car or a virtual safety car at this point in the Grand Prix, like, just plays into their hands massively. Pit under the safety car, pit under the virtual safety car. Everybody would win, really. Everyone who hasn't pitted yet would gain that advantage. George Russell, the front-running car that has pitted, Gasly and Colapinto behind have not. And then you get into Antonelli, Bortoleto, Behrman. They've all pitted at this point in the Grand Prix then. Maybe a caution could shake things up. I don't think it would. That's the problem. A caution at this point would just mean everybody would stop because you'd gain the ability to pit under the safety car conditions and gain that advantage whilst everyone else has to slow down. You can go through the pit lane at the normal pit lane speed. Isaac Hadjar has had enough of those tyres, decides to pit and come out in the Racing Bull. Let's see where Isaac Hadjar then slots into position. He's going to fall back and he's ahead of Yuki Tsunoda though. This is how much Yuki Tsunoda lost out in that battle with Liam Lawson. Makes me wonder if there's any kind of damage to Yuki Tsunoda's car there, because he is going pretty slowly compared to what you'd expect from him. Charles Leclerc, box for Ferrari. Here we go then. The front runners deciding to come across. Let's see where George Russell is in comparison to Charles Leclerc. Leclerc getting very late on the brakes as he comes into the pit lane. There is also the McLaren pit crew out in the pit lane as well. So possibly one of the McLarens thinking about it soon. Charles Leclerc coming down the pit straight. Lewis Hamilton is ahead of him. Alex Albon is ahead of him. Comes out ahead of Esteban Ocon. So, yeah, Ocon, Stroll, Russell miles adrift now of Charles Leclerc, actually. What's the gap there? Leclerc, 3 seconds ahead of Ocon. Another second. So, Russell now 5 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. And also now stuck behind Stroll and Ocon, which is not a fun place to be if you're inside of the Mercedes car. Franco Colapinto into the pits. He's going to fall to the back of the pack as well. How long is a pit stop? Yeah, around the 20-second mark. So if you've got a 20-second lead, for instance, Max Verstappen, if he pitted now, he would come out ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Pretty comfortably ahead of Lewis Hamilton. So Verstappen would only drop to third if he does pit. Hamilton 15.5 seconds behind Piastri, the gap between the top 3 and 4th place. Albon then another 12 seconds behind Hamilton. Leclerc now catching up to the back of the Williams, 3.5 seconds the gap he's got there, but fresh tyres on the Ferrari. And Lance Stroll is able to keep George Russell at bay at the minute. Leclerc on the radio. Charles Leclerc asking why they decided to stop now, and the Ferrari team saying that they'll discuss it later. So nothing for us to gain from Charles Leclerc's radio message there, as George Russell gets the move done on Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, 35 laps completed on those hard compound tyres, and George Russell's fresh set, much better in the braking zones, gets to the inside of the track, and Lance Stroll doesn't put up too much of a problem for him, knowing that they're not really fighting with the Mercedes cars this weekend, are the Aston Martins. Fernando Alonso went over the curbs as he exited turn 10, and the suspension on his Aston Martin car just gave up. Like a real anomaly. Didn't, attack the curbs too dramatically, in my opinion, anyway. But Fernando Alonso breaking the suspension on the Aston Martin. And a real shame, actually. He was running in front of Gabriel Bortoleto in the race, so was certainly on for a point-scoring finish, was Fernando Alonso. Bortoleto and Behrman inheriting those points from him, though. Won't complain too much. And Bortoleto will get the opportunity to have a chat to his manager, Fernando Alonso, after the race about what kind of happened there. Fernando gaining that position in the pit stops and then losing it anyway, as George Russell now makes it 2 moves in 2 laps and makes it an even easier move for him into turn 1, as he now gets past Esteban Ocon and back up into the top 7 runners. Leclerc, though, 4.5 seconds ahead. And Lando Norris what are your thoughts on the soft tyre? And he just says the opposite of the car ahead, as Pierre Gasly also gets a black and white flag for track limits. That his third infringement as well. So Gasly and Antonelli now need to be a little bit careful for these final 17 laps, that they don't get another track limits infringement. That would see them get a penalty, particularly for Kimi Antonelli, as he is closing in on some points for this weekend at his home Grand Prix. Charles pitted for hards. Yeah, that's what, well, Charles on the radio himself even said, so why have we pitted now? I think they've just covered off Russell a little bit, and I think they've realised that they're not going to get anywhere close to Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, so they're kind of just slotting Leclerc in, making sure that he's on the same tyre as Russell, and almost consolidating a fourth place finish rather than looking at a possible podium for him. Not that podium was ever really going to happen, to be honest. So you can understand why they've decided to do that inside of the Ferrari team. Just make sure that it's done and dusted, I guess. I suppose you could argue they could have waited just in case there's a safety car, just in case there's a virtual safety car. But again, I don't think that it's going to gain Leclerc anything in particular. Max pitting. Ooh. Max Verstappen is indeed pitting. Great shout in the chat. Verstappen into the pits. He is first of the front runners. Should come out behind Norris and Piastri. Hard compound tyre. Goes on to Max Verstappen's car. There you go. Lando Norris said he wants the opposite of the car ahead. Max Verstappen has made his decision. Verstappen goes on to the hard compound tyre for the last 16 laps of this Grand Prix. New race leader Lando Norris. And Lando Norris then, is it the soft compound tyre for him? 6.1 seconds he has got over Oscar Piastri, and another 6 seconds to Verstappen ahead. So Lando Norris in a little bit of a 12-second no man's land, but now leading this Grand Prix. See what Verstappen's lap times are like on these hard compound tyres. Do you go for a set of softs, you know? Will the soft compound tyre actually give you enough of an advantage? Because gone very late have these pit stops. I was expecting pit stops in sort of the mid-20s, and we're looking at Verstappen not making his first stop until lap 37 of the Grand Prix. So Pirelli, unfortunately, just seemed to have got it completely wrong with these race tyres this year. There's been no real difference between the medium and the hard compound, and maybe the soft compound is the one that will be a little bit different to the other two. Carlos Sainz on the radio. The battery today is a joke. Carlos Sainz clearly struggling to get the power down that he needs to. 19 seconds, the gap between Norris and Verstappen. We haven't seen Verstappen do a proper lap yet on those hard compound tyres, as Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari peels into the pits. Leclerc and Russell going to make their way by. Is Lewis Hamilton going to come up behind Ocon and Stroll, though? That would be the problem. Ocon and Stroll yet to have pitted. Looking like they're just going to go all the way to the end, possibly, Ocon and Stroll. We saw Ocon do it in Baku, where he pitted on the absolute final lap of the race, maybe just hoping and praying for some kind of safety car. I think Ocon playing that same kind of strategy here, just praying that there's going to be a safety car at some point, as Kimi Antonelli starts fighting with Pierre Gasly for position. Gasly not giving up that position to the Italian yet, though. This is for the final point scoring place, although Pierre Gasly yet to have stopped. Here comes Kimi Antonelli on the left-hand side of Pierre Gasly. Down towards turn 4 they go, and the Mercedes car able to get that move done before Gasly gets into the braking zone of turn 4. And up into the point scoring places once again, Kimi Antonelli. So 10th place for him. But as we can see, Ocon and Stroll ahead of him yet to have pitted as well. Albon yet to have stopped. So Kimi Antonelli up into 10th. More places to come towards him as the Grand Prix comes towards a close. Lap 40 of 53 is where we sit right now. Albon still needs to stop. He does indeed. So Norris, Piastri, Albon, Stroll, Ocon all need to pit inside of the top 10. Gasly still needs to pit too inside of the Alpine as well, just outside of those point scoring places. So Bortoleto and Behrman looking like they are on for some points. Carlos Sainz even possibly. Carlos Sainz gone for the opposite strategy to Albon. Albon was the leading Williams car of the two earlier on in the Grand Prix. Don't know what the gap is between them now. Albon 34 seconds off the lead. Carlos Sainz 61. So Albon should still come out ahead of Carlos Sainz as it stands right now. As Carlos Sainz having a little look at Ollie Behrman. Talking to the Williamses. Oh, and they touch. Oh, and it's a big, big shunt between the two. Behrman and Sainz both come together down towards turn 4. And that sent both of them spinning. So Behrman and Sainz. That is very unfortunate for the both of them, especially because they were looking on the fringe of points there. Isaac Hadjar gaining massively in that advantage, back up into 13th place, and suddenly Isaac Hadjar is on a run for some good points this weekend. Starting from the back of the pack. Let's have a little look at that once again when we get the opportunity to. But Sainz and Behrman have indeed collided towards turn 4-5. They are both running still, but they were facing the wrong direction for a good few seconds there and allowed Isaac Hadjar to get the jump on both of them as Lewis Hamilton now gets his way past Lance Stroll once again. Here comes Gabriel Bortoleto making a move on Pierre Gasly and gets that move done. Jesus. My phone going mental. Okay. Here we are again then. Carlos Sainz. Round turn 3 they come. Sainz has got the better straight line speed. Down towards turn 4. Behrman has the inside line though. And ooh. Gets tagged with the rear end of Behrman. And I think Behrman... Yeah, I think Carlos Sainz... ahead of the apex, but Carlos Sainz also didn't leave too much room on the inside there. And yeah, Carlos Sainz did kind of turn ahead as Ollie Behrman was alongside him. Behrman has absolutely nowhere to go there, so it depends how they see it. Carlos Sainz was maybe half a car length ahead, and whether or not they will see that as Carlos Sainz being far enough ahead to sort of say that the corner was his. Because, you know, it's that whole ahead at the apex kind of thing. Or whether they'll say, actually, you know, Ollie Behrman was on the left-hand side. You need to leave space for Ollie Behrman on the left-hand side. And therefore, that incident involving Carlos Sainz and Ollie Behrman has indeed been noted and will definitely get investigated by the stewards. Alex Albon, whilst we were looking at that, has pitted for the Williams team and has come out ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. So Alex Albon, a big, big winner in all of that. He's gained a couple of positions. Bortoleto and Alonso, remember, were the two drivers that started inside of the point scoring places, like really high up in the point scoring places for the midfield teams. Alonso dropped out of the Grand Prix, but Bortoleto has also dropped down behind a couple of drivers he was running ahead of earlier on in this Grand Prix, and it feels like just waiting as late as you possibly can to pit is the pit strategy this weekend. I mean, Max Verstappen is a lot quicker than Norris and Piastri at the moment, but neither Norris nor Piastri has pitted yet. Norris is now getting to the point where he's overtaking back markers. Norris has made his way past Franco Colapinto here, and I think we're just sort of sitting at this point where Verstappen, if there had been a safety car there between Behrman and Sainz, then maybe we'd have seen this go a little bit further, and Lando Norris possibly getting the gap to pit with Verstappen and maybe come out near him. But at this moment in time, Norris is going to pit. He's still going to come out 10 seconds behind Verstappen. So unless those soft compound tyres are worth more than a second per lap, It's very unlikely that there's going to be anything here, as Verstappen goes fastest in the middle sector of anybody so far this weekend, or today, sorry, I should say. And Lando Norris continues on to lap 44 of this Italian Grand Prix. I'm not sure about this one. Just feels like the tyres have completely ruined this Grand Prix from being anything other than a procession, really. The fact that there's just no degradation at all that is costing a considerable chunk of time. Just waiting and watching and hoping, really, that cars that are still running out there. Still got Norris and Piastri, still both on the medium tyres. We've got Ocon and Stroll still running the hard compound tyres that they started on. Pierre Gasly also hasn't pitted yet either. So those 5 will still need to pit at some point. They are obliged to pit at least once during the Grand Prix. As Alex Albon now having a little look at Kimi Antonelli. This is the other thing for Alex Albon. He's now on some medium tyres, having started on the hards, and Antonelli on some slightly scrubbed set of hard compound tyres. And Albon having a look at Antonelli down in towards turn 3. Antonelli closes the gap on him, but Albon's going to have the run around the outside at turn 4, and is going to be able to get to the apex of turn 4 before Antonelli, and Albon up into 9th place. Albon looking like a really, really solid point scoring finish ahead of him, because he's going to gain on Ocon and Stroll. So Albon going to finish best of the rest in 7th place as it stands. A huge gap, though, between the front runners. Piastri closing in on Lando Norris, it has to be said. 3.5 seconds now, the gap between the 2 McLaren cars. I mean, Max Verstappen has won this Grand Prix. I think that's sort of fairly clear to say. I think the two McLaren cars have now kind of given up on winning this Grand Prix. For those of you wondering what McLaren cars are doing, like why they're not just pitting, I think they're almost playing a little bit of chicken between themselves, because Piastri is closing the gap on Lando Norris here. Lando Norris box this lap. And Lando Norris asking on the radio, do you want to do it first? Piastri saying maybe he's going to have to come in first. Lando Norris continues, and Piastri in. So the undercut clearly not being seen as effective enough, because Piastri having to come in first of the McLaren cars. Lando Norris opting to stay out. And now Piastri in and out once again. Lando Norris not thinking that the lap time is really going to be that much different on those new tyres. Max Verstappen disappears into the lead once again. Slightly scrubbed set of Piastri's soft compound tyres used in qualifying yesterday. Those tyres for Piastri didn't have a fresh set of soft compound tyres, because I don't think anybody was expecting to really use the soft compound tyres today during the Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli forcing another driver off the track. That's been noted by the stewards as well. Still haven't got any confirmation on the Carlos Sainz incident with Ollie Behrman. But, I mean, cost both of them a pretty considerable amount of time anyway. Sainz and Behrman now running behind Isaac Hadjar and in 14th and 15th place. So not very happy at all, especially considering Behrman could have been right behind Bortoletto at this point. 10-second time penalty for Ollie Behrman. So they have seen it as Carlos Sainz was far enough ahead to have that racing position, and that Ollie Behrman should have conceded it. Oh, and Lando Norris, a very slow stop. He's lost 4 seconds in that pit stop, has Lando Norris. And here comes Oscar Piastri. It's going to be pretty close between the two. Oh, Oscar Piastri has been out. Oh, Lando Norris has lost position to Oscar Piastri here. And this has not gone the way of Lando Norris at all. Lando Norris opting to pit second. We get the radio message there from McLaren, but that will be a lap or so old. Let's see what happened here for Lando then. The pit stop is slow. Really slow. They didn't tighten the front left tire on Lando Norris's car. The guy's sitting there with the wheel gun in his hand. He thinks that the tire's connected, but it's not. And the wheel gun must have not quite tightened it fully. He then has to go back to tighten that front left again. And Norris has lost position to Piastri. Oh my goodness. This is another thing that is just fallen away from Lando Norris. So instead of gaining 3 points, Lando Norris now losing 3 points to Piastri. Lando Norris's luck has all run out. Like, I don't know what he did during the summer breaks. He just go and walk past some black cats and under some ladders, and he spent 4 weeks doing that because everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Piastri now ahead of his teammate by 2 seconds. And Piastri has been given the go-ahead to race with Lando Norris, and well, doesn't need to race him to get in front of him. He's there right now. Verstappen on the radio. Bring this home, no risk. No risk, full push, says Max Verstappen. Just can't help himself, can Max Verstappen. He's a racer at heart. He's got an 18-second lead at the front of the Grand Prix. He's done everything he needed to, because the two McLaren cars have been keeping an eye on one another. I think Piastri, and Norris knew that Verstappen was going to win this Grand Prix from fairly early on. So they've just kind of been slotting into position and waiting for the other. Lando Norris then opting for Piastri to take the first pit stop. It's a 4-second difference between the pit stops is what's put Oscar Piastri ahead. Piastri was 3.5 seconds adrift of Lando Norris before the pit stops happened. Piastri on the radio. And Piastri is being told on the radio to let Lando past. And Piastri, to be fair to him, does. I'm not sure many drivers would have let Lando Norris past there. I think that is very, very kind from Oscar Piastri. I think it's fair. I understand why they've done it. And as they said, it's a little bit like Hungary last year, where Lando Norris did eventually give that position back to Oscar. But the circumstances around it are a lot different to Hungary last year. It's not like they're both chasing Verstappen for the championship. It is a championship that is a 2-horse race. And Lando Norris has been given a lifeline there by Oscar Piastri. Piastri is going to have DRS to his teammate. I mean, ooh, that is an interesting one. Oscar gave the position back. You are now free to race. Clinical, clear your head. So Piastri has 3 laps left once they get around this one to have a little go at Lando Norris. He's going to be within DRS range of his teammate, but it's going to take something very special indeed if Oscar Piastri is going to be able to get in front of his teammate here. Max Verstappen is clearly going to win this Grand Prix. Piastri, wow, that is an interesting one. If you were Oscar Piastri, would you have given that position back? Would you have been kind enough to your teammate to give that position back in this championship scenario? And if Oscar Piastri loses the championship by 3 points, I know it's a big if. I know it's a very big if. But if Oscar Piastri does indeed fall behind Lando Norris in the championship come Abu Dhabi, and it's 3 points that is the difference, we can look back at this Monza Grand Prix and look back at Oscar Piastri being very kind indeed. And possibly, I know it's a team error, very much a team error, don't get me wrong. But 3 points is 3 points. And it's not an Oscar Piastri error. As you say, it's a team error. Oscar Piastri can't be blamed for that. Wow, and Max Verstappen even giggles over the radio at it. Max Verstappen being told to focus on the road ahead, and Lando Norris. I think that tells you everything that you need to know. Max Verstappen would not have given that position back at all in any sense of the word. Had that been Max Verstappen, absolutely no chance that they would have swapped positions back there. But Oscar Piastri is a different driver to Max Verstappen. We're in different circumstances now. And that is going to be pretty much it, to be honest with you. Whew. Someone has been off at turn 6. Lando Norris now a second and a half ahead of Piastri. Has the pace on his teammate. So Piastri outside of DRS range. Couple of laps left to go. Unlikely that we're going to see any more swaps between the two McLaren cars. Charles Leclerc 3.5 seconds back. Then George Russell 5th. Hamilton 6th. Ocon still hasn't pitted at this point. Ocon doing exactly what he did in Azerbaijan a couple of years ago and pitting as late as humanly possible. Max Verstappen, pole position into a victory at Monza. Certainly not what I had on my predictions card. But Max Verstappen defies predictions sometimes, doesn't he? A sensational job from Max Verstappen. A 20-second victory at the front. Maybe a little bit exaggerated by the fact that the two McLaren cars really only had eyes for one another throughout this Grand Prix. But 20 seconds nonetheless. Alex Albon gets that move done on Esteban Ocon, and so does Kimi Antonelli as Ocon finally decides to come into the pits. Gabriel Bortoleto up into 9th place, and I'll tell you what, Isaac Hadjar is going to be on for a point scoring position here. Had Carlos Sainz and Ollie Behrman not come to blows together, Hadjar slotted into that 10th place finish ahead of Sainz and Behrman once those two collided. So Carlos Sainz can feel aggrieved once again to not have some points on his points card for the season. He's going to finish in 11th place is Carlos Sainz. Ollie Behrman, 10-second penalty for him. Going to drop him down the order. Only a position or two though. And Hadjar, P10 is a very, very impressive drive from Isaac Hadjar once again. That's going to move him ahead of Nico Hülkenberg in the driver's standings. And let's have a little look at the championship, as we don't really have much to be looking at in this final lap of the race. So Piastri is going to gain 15 points, not the 18 points that we thought he might gain just a few laps ago after Lando Norris's slow stop. Lando Norris gains 18. That gap closes to 31 points. Could have been 37, though, if Piastri hadn't been quite as nice as he is. Alex Albon will gain a position on Kimi Antonelli, finishes ahead of Kimi Antonelli in today's race, 7th to 8th, and therefore also gains an additional 2 points on him. Isaac Hadjar gains that 1 point up into 9th place. He'll be ahead of Nico Hülkenberg on points. They're currently level pegging. And Gabriel Bortoleto will move up to 16th place. Max Verstappen, though, comes across the start-finish line and wins the Italian Grand Prix once more. Oscar Piastri, we're on board with him in 3rd place. Lando Norris is coming around turn 11 right now. Comes across the start-finish line to take 2nd place in his McLaren car. And Oscar Piastri is going to round out the podium positions. It's going to be an interesting one to discuss with those McLaren drivers after the race. The fact that Piastri did indeed give that position back to Lando Norris, especially if that comes up again, maybe later on in the season when Lando Norris is asked to give a position to Oscar Piastri. See if he's as kind as he would have been. But pole position and the victory for Max Verstappen, a very solid drive for him indeed. Ooh! Kimi Antonelli has been given a penalty. What's that penalty for? Where's the penalty for Antonelli? 5-second time penalty for driving erratically for Kimi Antonelli. So Gabriel Bortoleto inherits 8th place. And Bortoleto, another couple of points for him, puts him on 18 this season. That means Antonelli only gains 2 points rather than 4 as well. But Antonelli given a 5-second penalty at the death there. Driving erratically for that. It was for forcing Albon off. They finally got to the bottom of that one. Oh, I forgot that was still under investigation, to be honest with you. Ollie Behrman, that 10-second penalty for causing a collision for him. Ocon got a 5-second penalty as well. There are a few investigations that played against some of the drivers this weekend. But there we have it. The final running order. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri are 3 drivers on the podium. Leclerc and Russell just outside of it. Leclerc gave it his best towards the beginning of the Grand Prix, but didn't quite have it at the end. George Russell, the best of the Mercedes cars. Lewis Hamilton, his first Italian Grand Prix in a Ferrari, finishes with a 6th place finish. Alex Albon, how many times have we said he's best of the rest? The midfield driver, Maestro, in 7th place. Gabriel Bortoleto finishes in 8th. Kimi Antonelli in 9th. Isaac Hadjar takes that final point scoring place. Carlos Sainz and Ollie Behrman could have been them in the point scoring places, to be honest. They lost a lot of time when they collided with one another. Behrman even picking up a 10-second penalty. Tsunoda also hitting into Lawson meant that he dropped down outside of contention for the point scoring places. Ocon had an early penalty and pitted in insanely late. And then Gasly, Colapinto, Stroll all really had, well, no pace whatsoever throughout the entire day, really, did they? The Renault-powered cars struggling on a very engine-heavy track. Thank you guys so much for watching. Massively appreciate you stopping by. If you could hit the like button, subscribe button, that'd be all good. And I'm going to be live in a few minutes' time. I say 3 or 4 minutes time for members only. If you're a member of the channel, stick with us as we'll have a little, probably sort of half an hour, 40-minute chat about this Grand Prix. There wasn't too much to discuss outside of Oscar Piastri being very kind indeed. Would you have given him the position? Would you not have given him the position? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in a moment.